Narayanam namaskritam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayodyarya nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavatamasuki bhaktir bhavati naistiki nigama kalbhaktur garitam palam shukhamakaram ritarjovi samritam pivata bhagavatam rasamalyam mahorahor sikuk bhavi babakaham Krishna Swadamapagate Dhamagini Saha Karunashta Dishamisha Padanako Dunoditaham Tamapiyadabhishuta Vishutam Vivu Samapiyadana Vidambruk Saram Prakyayiduhor Maharitam Sankleshanavanam Usanti Nanyataham Atmanamastamunaya and the Granti Kavan Orvanti Aitikumita Bhutagana Hari Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Dev Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabrahma Tajmai Sri Guru Maham Dugame Patimi Andasha, Scalapate, Gatamaru, Shakipaya Sanadu, Santu, Santu Vidambaram, Mokam Kavipakarian Savaras Marine, Pangaki Langana Deka Karikane. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandit Japide, Gopisha Gopika Kandara, the Kantanamos today. Jayatam Surito Pango, Mamamania Matergati, Matsava Shaparam, Boja Radha Matan Mohanam. Sriman Rasa Rasaram Vamsi Bada, Karsan Bene Shunokubi, Gopanata Sri Asiram. Divya Grindarani Company Mada Srimad Ratnagara Shima Sanashto Sri Sri Radha Shila Govinda De Prasadavi Seva Manush Manami Namo Brahmanidavaya Go Brahmanitaya Chadigaritaya Krishnaya Govinaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Dadaja Mangalam Pariri Kaksho Manganaya Tanohani Om Narayanaya Vimahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Pachodhyate Om Mahadevi Vidmahi Vishnu Paditi Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Pachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Sare Sari Hari Priya Namastubhyam Dhanayadine Om Aganati Maranda Syanganangana Salakya Chaksurun Miridam Yanatajmai Sri Gurve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manavishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dharati Swaparantikam Namam Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimari Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharine Nirvishes Sunivari Paskita Desaran Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Good morning, Rob. You there?
Yes, Prabhuji. Good morning.
Morning. I saw you chanted, 17 rounds in Salt Lake City for the Japathon?
Yes, they did.
How was that for you? Describe your experience.
It was great. It took me a little bit to get into the rhythm, but then once I did, it was just kind of rolling off my tongue, and it was a joy to do. And I felt just more comfortable in my own skin, I guess you could say, after doing that. Just more confident in where I was and what I was doing. It's just more balanced. Just felt really good.
Nice.
And the blessings were coming in before I even got home. So it was wonderful.
I think that was your first job. You said you came to the temple first time at New Year's Day last year, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, this is your first anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Govinda Dev just joined us. He was the highest. He had the highest number of rounds of anybody between the Salt Lake City and the Spanish Fort Temple. He chanted 80 rounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He chanted altogether between the two temples. We chanted, 1,661 rounds, which comes to 2,870,208 names of God for one day. We wanted to donate one name to every resident in the state of Utah. I think there's slightly more than 3 million. So we didn't do every person, but we did every household, maybe 2 or 3 times over. Every household gets a name. Of course, Utah householders are famous for being stacked to the walls. Big families, but Anyway, it was a great experience as always, a wonderful way to start off the new year. Speaking of Govinda Dev, he mentioned in a conversation, he was his usual inspiring and supportive self. He mentioned in a phone conversation to me over the weekend that he's enjoyed these Bhagavatam classes, which have been going on since the beginning of COVID. And he mentioned he thought that they were ever fresh. There were always new realizations. And that sparked my curiosity. So I looked up on YouTube how many morning Bhagavatam classes we posted. And it's like 370 different classes. And isn't it wonderful that you can talk 3 times a week. You could talk, I feel like I could talk 7 times a week or 14 times a week, and it would never get stale. There would always be fresh insights, fresh revelations that come about when you turn the nectar of Krishna, and you turn Krishna's name, Krishna, Rama. Rupa Goswami said, Tande Tandavini Ratam Padadata Danadavyate Karna Krida Kadambini Katayate Karnabyudishpriham. I wish I had millions of tongues, because when I take those 2 syllables, Krishna and Rama, turn them together, it creates so much nectar that I wish I had millions of tongues, millions of ears. Just like you take a stick of sandalwood and you moisten it and rub it on a pestle. So the pestle has a rough surface and the sandalwood is hard. And when you kind of lubricate with a little water, what happens is by repeated rubbing, there's a wonderfully refreshing paste. As you know, it gets quite hot in the summer in India. But if you take that sandalwood paste and apply it to your forehead, Prabhupada, many of the pictures you see of Prabhupada, he would have this paste on his forehead. It provides relief. It's very cooling on a hot day. And so when you rub the 2 syllables, Krishna, Rama, Hare, together, it cools down the fever from material life. It gives us relief. We also had a nice call, and bringing you up to date here on Sunday night with the New Jersey congregation. I was invited by Mata and Gopal. So that's on our Facebook page, Hare Krishna Temple, Salt Lake City, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Spanish 4, as well as True Utah, if you care to review it. It was a very New Jersey congregation is about to open a temple. Their temple is 90% completed. They've had a marathon effort. I believe they flew me over there. Samaka Rishi, who was president at the time, flew me over maybe as many as 12, 15 years ago. And they were just beginning that project. So it's taken a long time. It's taken a lot of dogged determination. But the devotees rose to the occasion. And we'll talk about that. Our topic today is unflinching faith. So it's always good to get the association of the New Jersey temple, because they're a wonderful example of slogging it out over the long haul, enduring many, many setbacks and reverses, apparent negatives, but never fainting, never retreating, always taking more and more ground for the kingdom. And now our temple's 80% finished. Going to be a magnificent temple right in the downtown area of probably New Jersey. There are more Indians in New Jersey, I think, than any other state. And of all the towns of New Jersey, probably the largest percentage of Indians is Parsippany. When you drive, they flew me out to the Color Festival a few years ago. I was amazed that when you drive around, the pedestrians who are walking here and there, and if you look through the windshields of the motorists, fully 25% of the people who live in Parsippany are Indian, of Indian background. And their temple will be a prime spot of land right in downtown Parsippany. It's going to be a huge triumph for ISKCON and for Prabhupada. One other thing I have to share with you, now that we've flipped over from 2021 to 2022, we've got a downhill slope now to 4 color festivals. The first one is Spanish Fork on March 26th and 27th, then Las Vegas, then Ogden, and then Salt Lake City. So I haven't done anything on it during the holidays, figuring the bureaucrats with whom I have to deal, and the park supervisors and police and so on and so forth. wouldn't get back to me anyway, but on my agenda later on today is to write to the county attorney's office in Provo, as well as the Parks Department, Brian Saliba in Las Vegas. Make sure they send me the application. We're penciled in for April 16th. I've got to call Ashley up in Ogden and make sure we get the reservation for the city park there. I've got to get serious about firming up these color festivals. We have been selling tickets through our ticket agency, Ticket Spice, all throughout the month of December. In fact, I think $263 came in just yesterday from ticket sales. So got a lot of momentum. And now that the first of the year is over and we've got a straight downhill shot for the best of colors, it's about time for me to get on my horse and get my giddy up. As far as today's discussion is concerned, good morning, Jay. Good morning, Natasha. Hare Krishna. Happy New Year to all of you. Good morning, Rakesh, John Malik, Ram Kishore. Chanted 65 rounds to the credit of Spanish Fort. I only did 64. Thomas did 64. Ram Kishore was up there, maybe second highest in the whole yatra, I think. Coming in, parachuting in from Minnesota. Thank you. Bye, Bobby. Up dressing the deities and doing some arti there. Govinda Dave, Brent, good to see you. Jean, Sundari Priya. All right. The 39th verse, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is our part 2 for it, entitled Unflinching Faith. Imam Shah Nigamam Brahman Avetya Madanushtitam Ada Me Ganam Aishram Shashmin Bhavam Nakeshama. O Brahman of Vyasadeva, by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was first endowed with transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas, then with spiritual opulences, and then with his intimate, loving service. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna sets a lot of conditions. Krishna is the highest, the most supreme, super excellent person, and only those who are persons of excellence get to associate with the Lord. Like if you want to mix with fire, you have to become like fire itself, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma. Therefore, Krishna says, Yesham tu antigadam papam gyanapurim, tedvanvam mukta bhajanti mamati. Only those, Yesham tu antigadam papam, who have not done any sins, not only in this life, but they have not done sins in many previous lives as well. That certainly doesn't describe us. I'll tell you that right now. They've risen above dualities and illusion, and they are engaged in the devotional service with unbudgeable, unshakable faith and determination. This is the standard that Krishna sets in the Bhagavad Gita 5,300 years ago. It's an impossible standard for us. And yet Krishna came again as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and made it so much easier and so much more accessible. He said, if you'll just chant, if you'll simply agree to take the holy name on the tip of your tongue and associate with the Lord through sound vibration, you will achieve the highest level of perfection. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu offered us the elevator. The process that Lord Chaitanya has delivered is often compared to the elevator. There are many steps to the topmost yoga, to Krishna consciousness. Yoginam Visharvasham Madgana Shraddhaya Bhajate Teme Yuktanam. Krishna says, to worship me and to aim for me, to have me as your destination, is the highest of all yogic practices. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us an option to the long, arduous uphill climb, step by step by step by step by step. He provided the elevator. What is that elevator? Kali Kalera Dhamma, Krishna Nama Sankirtana, Krishna Shakti, Vina Nahi Tada Pavartam. In this fallen age of Kali, all we need do is chant the holy names of the Lord with attention under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. We don't have to study the Vedas. The imports of all the Vedas are contained Krishna mantra japa shari mantra within those 16 words. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. All the imports of the Vedas are contained. Vedas cha sarva hamiva vedanta kriya vedavid evachaham. Krishna says, I am the compiler of the Vedas, I am the gold of the Vedas, I am the purpose of the Vedas. When you connect with him through sound vibration, you're considered to be the knower of all Vedic truths. Communion with the Lord by transmission of transcendental sound is non-different from the Lord himself. Chanting the holy names of the Lord with attention under proper guidance is the completely perfect method for approaching the Lord. In the Kali Yuga age, it trumps yoga, it trumps penances, trumps austerities, trumps giving in charity, trumps studying the Vedas. Not that those things are not helpful, but in and of themselves, they are incomplete. They're inadequate to achieve 100% perfection of life, Krishna consciousness. And they're so powerful that without any prior qualifications, what to speak of without any prior qualifications, even those who are the most fallen, the most disqualified by previous standards, have achieved the highest level of perfection. Bhagavatam is full of stories of people like Ajamil, other Dhruva Maharaj, and many, many others who are engaged in sinful activities, and yet on the strength of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, they got the result that in previous ages could have only been attained through many, many, many births of practice. The hunter, Narada Maigrari, in spite of all his sinful activities, was willing to acknowledge Narada Muni as a superior personality, as someone who was capable of instructing him in the right path. The hunter, when Narada Muni asked the hunter to follow his instructions, the hunter didn't hesitate. The hunter didn't waffle. He didn't sidestep. He didn't make excuses. He didn't prevaricate. He says, Vyada kahe, yehi kaha se te kariba. Vyada kahe means whatever you say, yada kahe, say kahe, say kariba, I will do. Whatever you say, I will do. That's the attitude. When we've identified a bona fide spiritual master who's free from illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating, who knows the scriptures back to front, at least the essence of the scripture, Buddhi Buddhi Bhutanam Yenat Mashi, when Sutta Goswami approaches the sages and named Hisharanya, Bhuta Bhavana, they say, my dear sir, you are knower of everything except some parts of the Vedas. So that he didn't know all the Vedas didn't matter. They brushed that aside. But they said, Buddhi Buddha Bhutanam Yatmashu Atasadyat Sharetsaram Bhuvi Badana Bhatanam. You are the possessor of the essence of the Vedas, Sara. So give us the essence, whatever we've learned. And we will sit here, we will take it unquestioningly. We will not challenge you. We will drink it in as nectar. Narada kahe, Dhanuka banga se tabakara. So as soon as the hunter said, whatever say ke kariba, whatever you say, I will do, Narada Muni said, break your bow and throw it in the river. The bow was, according to Maharaj's experience, up until that point in time, it was his means of sustenance. It was like his toolbox. If you're a plumber, you have your tools. If you're HVAC, you have your tools. If you're in finances, you have your tools. If you're an educator, you have your tools, your PowerPoints, and your blackboards, and your chalk. Everybody has their tools, and everybody thinks that it is through the tools that they make the living. Narada Muni is teaching a hunter essential lesson here. It's not through the tools that we get our provision. It's not through the economy. It's not through the stock market. It's not through our investments. It's not through the politicians. God is Jehovah Jada. God is our proprietor. God is our sustainer. He is our provider. So it is said, Yasha deve parabhaktiya yata deve tatagaru tashaitikata prakashante mahatmana. Those who are willing to follow the instructions of the spiritual master, they may seem a little difficult. They may be a little hard to swallow at first, but if you're predetermined to follow in the footsteps of those great souls who have implicit faith in the Lord and in their own spiritual masters, we are assured, we are guaranteed by scriptural authority, corroborated by hundreds and hundreds of saints and sages in the past, Bahavo Gana Tapasha Pudbhamavgatam, that we will be successful, that all the truths of the Vedas, Prakashanti Mahatmana, to those who have unflinching faith in the Lord and the spiritual master, all the truths of the Vedas will become Prakash, they will become clarified. But first you have to do one thing, you have to surrender. You have to gulp, you have to take that step. You can't bonk on water if you don't get out of the boat. That first step is called initiation. The spiritual master will insist that the disciple give up illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meeting in the interest of purification. He's not trying to spoil your life, take away all your pleasures. He's not trying to get you away from something exclusively, but he's trying to get you to something much better. If you will work with the spiritual master in these areas, and the spiritual master will take care of your spiritual progress and elevate you to the platform of complete liberation. Narada Muni assured Magrari that the hunter, that he was not being maintained by his bow and his arrows, that he was being maintained by Krishna. And as the agent, as the representative, the mouthpiece of Krishna, Narada Muni assures the hunter that he would not suffer, that he would not starve as a result of breaking his bow. Nitya Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitanam Eko Yo Bidati Kamam. All we plural individual eternals are dependent upon the supreme singular eternal for our necessities of life. It is God upon whom we stand. He is the solid ground of our sustenance and our provision. So Narada Muni said, break your bow, leave your home, go to the river, construct a small cottage. In front of the cottage, grow a tulsi leaf, and begin to worship the tulsi and chant Hare Krishna. Don't worry that you no longer have your bow with you. We can imagine his grandfather was a hunter, his father was a hunter. Magraya had spent all of his life to date as a hunter. We can imagine that bow was like his arm. Throwing the bow in the river must have been for Magraya the greatest sacrifice, the hardest thing to do, almost like cutting it with his arm. Narada Muni assures him, just as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, 22nd verse, 9th chapter, Ananya stintayantam mam yejara parivatesham nitya yoga sayama bahami aham. For those who worship me through the spiritual master with devotion, meditating my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Oh, Magrari the hunter, took that step. He surrendered. He didn't see how he was going to maintain himself, but he had unflinching faith in the instructions of the spiritual master. He acknowledged that Narada Muni represents and speaks on behalf of the Lord. So after probably a few gulps, he threw his bow in the water, left his home, built a little cottage by the river, and began chanting. Now, at this stage, you might think that Narada Muni is encouraging Magrari to retire, to take a low profile, to go into seclusion, to keep his head down. But actually, that is not the ultimate plan that Narada Muni or Lord Krishna has in mind. Because of his reputation for having been a bloodthirsty hunter, people for hundreds of miles around had to take a look at this guy. They had to see him. They had to verify with their eyes that such a total transformation had taken place in the life of this man, who up to this point had taken pleasure in half killing, in sadistically torturing the animals. While Magrari was living, chanting Hare Krishna very peacefully and simply in the hut, people came to see him from all over. And it's a custom that when you go to see a saintly person, you bring something, some fruits, some grains, some vegetables. Magrari was impressing people with the power of devotional service. His previous bad habits were in fact now his greatest asset for showing people the power of the holy name, the power of Krishna consciousness. People said, well, if he could do it, certainly I could do it. I could step into the middle of these devotional practices. I could worship Tulsi. I could live a simpler life. I could rearrange my schedule to prioritize chanting the holy names of the Lord. So hundreds of people became devotees by the example of Magrari, and Magrari himself got 20 times more food than he could have ever acquired by the use of his bow. After some time, Narada Muni was curious to see how his disciple was getting along, and so he invited his friend Parvata Muni to go and visit Magrari with him. And many of you know the story already. When Magrari saw his spiritual master accompanied by a friend approach him in the distance, he excitedly ran to meet them, but in the course of going to touch their feet, he saw a line of ants going across the road. Got down on his knees and very, very carefully brushed the ants aside, so that when he offered his dandavats, when he prostrated himself like a stick on the road, he wouldn't crush any of those little ants. And at that time, this statement was quoted from a different part of the scriptures. Parvata Muni, I believe, said to his friend Narada, Eti nahi adbhuta vyadi. Apparently, Parvata Muni was also aware of the previous nefarious activities of Magrari. And so he says, Eti nahi adbhuta vyadi. Adbhuta means astonishment. You get goosebumps, your hackles rise, your hair stands on end. Tabahim Sarigota, it is nothing less than totally stupefying that this man who took pleasure in torturing and half-killing animals has now become non-violent, peaceful, and gentle, sensitive, and considerate to the point that he doesn't even want to hurt any ants. This is, although it's surprising in this individual case, it's not surprising as far as the general population of Vaishnavas is concerned. Vaishnavas are typically never disinclined to give any sort of pain or suffering to any other living entities because of envy or any other sentiments themselves. Eti nahi vyati tavahim sare haro bhakta pravitate na te su paritapanam. Commenting on the total transformation of heart, which he has seen with his very own eyes, Parvati Muni says this is absolutely extraordinary. And he turns to his friend Narada Muni. He says, Dekya Vyara Prema Parvarta Mahoni. He turns to his friend Narada Kahi Tumi Hayu Sparsha Mani. Sparsha means touch. He says to his friend Narada Muni, you are certainly a touchstone. When a touchstone touches iron, it turns the iron to gold, takes base metal, and transforms that worthless base metal into something extremely valuable. So Parvata Muni called his friend Narada Muni a touchstone because by his touch, by his brief interaction with the hunter, that hunter who had been the lowest among men became an elevated and perfect Vaishnava. Kirata Hulindip Hulindip Gashab Hirishabayam Yenecha Papara Sajati Tajmaya Prabhishnavedamha. The name of the Lord is so powerful that if it just finds its way into the darkest of hearts, it will illuminate the chambers of that heart and banish all unwanted things. This is what happened in the case of Magrari, the bloodthirsty hunter who became a great saint. Bhaktivinoda Thakur indicates that the position of a Vaishnava can be tested by seeing of how much of a touchstone he is. How good a Vaishnava are you? If you want to answer that question in a measurable way, And how many other people have you touched and transformed their lives in the course of your own devotional practice? When you get back to home, back to the spiritual world, how many other people will excitedly and delightedly come running up to you and say, I'm here because you put me on the path. I'm here because you brightened my path, because you guided me, because you took time for me, because you mentored me, because you had a good word for me, because you encouraged me. It's one thing to go yourself to the spiritual world, but it's much more pleasing to Krishna if you are the agent by which many, many others ascend to the spiritual world. Nacha tajman manushishu kashid me bhavita nechada anya priyataro bhuvi. Priyato means dear. Anya means there are no others, Krishna says, practically the concluding words of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna affirms, Anya Paryato, there are none who are more dear to me, Tajmad, than those who preach, who enlighten others, and become instrumental in bringing them back to home, back to God. And as far as we're concerned, Yadi Deki Tadi Ko Krishna Padesh Amaragahaya Desh, we should be on the lookout in our lives for anybody who knows the science of Krishna. Because knowing the science of Amarayagna Guru Hayatana, Krishna conscious people, by the words flowing from their mouths, are able to deliver us from birth, death, disease, and old age. Mara means death. In Sanskrit, when you put an A in front of something, it negates it. So pure devotees of the Lord are able to give us a mara. They're able to give us the fruit of devotional service, tasting which we no longer taste birth, death, disease, and old age. So by that contact with the Lord through his devotees, without cynicism, without a challenging attitude, without false pride, if a disciple, aspiring disciple, can follow the spiritual master and chant the holy names of the Lord, avoiding the 10 offenses, then to such a person, the Lord reveals his identity. He reveals his identity, Yasha Deve Paradatir, to those who have unflinching faith in the spiritual master as well as the Vedic scriptures. An attitude of disbelief, on the other hand, will keep us out, will shut us out. Krishna says, Ashadana Purusha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapya Mam Nivartate Mitu Samsaravartane. For those who are doubting, for those who are faithless, for those who waste the time of the spiritual master in useless inquiries without offering to do some service to assist in the mission of the spiritual master, Aprapya, the truths of the Vedas, the vision, the darshan of the beautiful Lord, is beyond their reach. They will never nivartate. They will never grasp the Lord. They will never get the shelter or protection of the lotus feet of the Lord. Rather, they will continue Ritu Sham Shadavartani. They will continue to revolve in the cycle of birth, death, diseases, and old age. So Narada Muni and all great devotees simply canvass. They have no other business than wishing to bless the fallen conditioned souls, so they will attain the Param Gatin, the ultimate goal of life. Sukadeva Goswami says, Kastam tu anadita parichitam rite pasham asatim nama koyat. Pure devotees note that without the blessing, without the elevating, rescuing, saving grace of the practice of chanting the holy name, people paritam vaitaranyam, they are falling into the Vaitarani river, which carries them into their next bodies under hellish conditions of life. But it says, who can see the mass of people fall in the Vaitarani river, destined to repeat birth, death, disease, and old age in many, many species of life, as a reptile, as a mammal, as a worm, as a plant, and not feel compassion for these people? Their main lack is asatam nama korya. They don't have the name. They're not locked into the practice of chanting the name. They're in the world of asat, the world of impermanence, and therefore they're revolving, rotating, brahmanda brahmite, in cycle of birth, death, disease, and old age throughout all the various species in the various planetary systems. So once again, our clarion call this morning is Yasha Deve Para Bhaktir Yata Deve Tatakaru Dasheti Katitiyatya Prakashanti Mahatmana. Our call is to muster up that faith in the words of the spiritual master, the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because through that faith, all the knowledge of the Vedic literatures will be revealed. This Krishna consciousness movement, which was established by Srila Prabhupada, is being propagated according to this principle. And because we have faith in the words of our spiritual master, everything is going on successfully. I think you'll agree. We're getting the positive help from our acharyas. Prabhupada had no assets when he got on the boat in 1965. He didn't even have the money to pay for his ticket. It was given to him in charity by Srimati Maharaji. Prabhupada had no prospects in America. Only a letter of introduction to a family, Gopal and Sally Alagawar, in upstate New York, of all places. He had no help from his mission. In fact, they had tried to discourage him from coming to America in the place, but he had no sponsorship from the Indian government. He had no patronage among well-to-do Indians, save and except for that ticket Srimati Maharaji gave him. But he had one asset, he had one quality which trumped all the others, which compensated for everything he lacked. Ananyas chintayantamam yejana paripad tesham nit yoga saimabhami. For those who meditate on my form and worship me in devotion, Krishna says, I carry what they lack, preserve what they have. So Prabhupada had this quality of unflinching faith in his spiritual master. And based on transplanting his faith from India to the shores of America, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has become the greatest power for spiritual purification in the world today. So one ultimately falena parichiyate, you judge every action by its result, you judge every tree by its fruit. Now when Prabhupada's spiritual master departed in 1936, the members of his mission, they did what would occur to people to do in the natural, calculating in a non-transcendental, a mundane way. They thought that the best springboard, the best thing they could do to preserve the mission and to spread the mission was to take claim of the physical properties. I believe there were 64 Gaudiya Math properties throughout India, and there was immediately competition amongst the followers of Bhaktisiddhanta to see who would occupy and who would lay claim to all these various properties. They thought in a mundane way that you have to preserve the properties of the Gaudiya Math in order to preserve the mission. But the mission of the Gaudiya Math was never, ever, ever about properties. It was about preaching, it was about Sankirtan, it was about outreach, and above and all everything else, it was about book distribution. After the Gaudiya Math had become successful and property, Bhaktisiddhanta reminded his followers that it was not acquisition of property, it was not temples and marble walls and floors that were the purpose for which he'd started the mission, but the purpose was to extend the compassion, to introduce people to the saving grace, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Once when Bhaktisiddhanta heard about some quibbles and quarreling and disputes that were going on in the big Calcutta temple that had been built, he said, better you take the marble off the walls, sell it, and distribute books. Because ours is a preaching mission. Ours is a mission of outreach. Because they use their energy to quibble and enter into lawsuits about the properties of the Gaudiya Math after the departure of Bhaktisiddhanta, they were able to make no progress in preaching became asara, or not very useful. On the other hand, the mission that Prabhupada started, forgetting about the properties of the Gaudiya Math, but taking the words of his spiritual master, if you ever get money, print books, taking those words on his head and packing up his volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam in a battered old metal trunk, he set off for the United States of America. The United States of America, especially the youth, the counterculture, disenfranchised, disenchanted with materialistic society, they were ready for what Srila Prabhupada had, which was unflinching faith in Guru and Guranga. Prabhupada's Guru told him, if you get money, print as many books as possible and distribute them all over the world. And Prabhupada says, in a humble mood, we have tried our best in this connection, and we're getting results beyond our expectations. The head of our disciplic session, Lord Brahma, in the 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, 5th chapter, 47th verse, Lord Brahma comments on this statement by Prabhupada, we're getting results beyond our expectation. Klesho bodhi apashane, karmani cha vipananja, dayanam vishanarta nato jaiva pitamte. It would seem that when your spiritual master leaves the planet, the direct course of action, the easiest thing to do, would be to consolidate the properties, make sure you have a place to live, a place to eat, a place to sleep, make sure your own personal comforts are satisfied, and then worry about the mission. That would seem to be the easiest thing to do, but that does not reflect unflinching faith in the highest teachings and words of the Guru. It would seem to be very easy. Consolidate the properties, keep our base intact, and then we can preach. And yet this very easy, apparently straightforward course of action became completely frustrating, counterproductive. It undid the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And yet, walking away from all the significant assets that the mission had, with a trunk of poorly printed books, going halfway across the world where you had no contacts and no prospects of success, but carrying the unflinching faith in the orders of the spiritual master in your head, that was the secret for success. That was, in fact, the greatest tangible asset that the Gaudiya Math had after the departure of Bhaktisiddhanta. If you ever get money, print books. Our mission is an outreach mission. Not that we shouldn't have temples. Prabhupada also established wonderful temples in India and encouraged temple constructions. But the movement is a preaching movement. The movement is not a movement of eating, sleeping, and being comfortable. Temples, such as they are bases, like military bases, from which we sally out and try to reach people where they are. Try to pull them out of the Vaitaranya river, the river of suffering and repeated birth and death. We see that no matter how hard the karmis work, the materialistic people work, the results are never satisfying. Their work results end in frustration. On the other hand, devotees who have simply dedicated their lives to taking the words of their spiritual master on their heads can achieve substantial results without working hard. Prabhupada was like a child in wonder. His eyes were big, his smile was ear to ear, because he started with nothing but the unflinching faith in the Lord and his Guru. So every day, the things that came to him, he credited that to Krishna and his Guru. He didn't think it was anything to do with his efforts, but because of his unflinching faith, he triggered the full support of the disciplic session, the previous acharyas, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once again, Ananya Chintayan Yejana Tesham Yoga Sema Vahamya. Krishna never voids his promise to his devotees. He says, I carry what they lack, preserve what they have. So Prabhupada saw on a day-to-day basis immense opportunities, doors opening one after another, disciples going to England and meeting the Beatles, producing a #1 hit record, getting 22 acres of land in a manor donated by George Harrison. One almost on a daily basis, Prabhupada saw the mercy, the favor, the blessings being rained upon him from his spiritual master, the disciplic succession, and the Supreme Personality of God. His movement that started with only 40 rupees now has countless millions of dollars worth of property. And all of this opulence has been achieved. Not one devotee who lives in the temple has a plan, has a budget, has a source of income. Each and every devotee gets up in the morning, and according to the orders of their spiritual master, they attend Mangalarti and they chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Prabhupada asked us to do just one thing, to follow his orders. By my order, you become empowered. By my order, all the truths of the Vedas are to be revealed. Prabhupada didn't ask us to be concerned with budgets or getting jobs or going for PhDs. He simply said, take the order of the spiritual master on your head and everything will be supplied. Within the first 8 or 10 years, after which Prabhupada landed in America with no money and no friends and no assets and no support, within 8 or 10 years, he had temples all over the world. He had vans, he had followers, he had buildings. Who can develop a building so swiftly? And also, often we see that non-devotees who work hard and sweat and foam at the mouth to build up a business, that business also often goes under. There's a change in the economy, there's a pandemic. What was going well for some period of time all of a sudden goes south. They have to close their doors and take financial losses. What they had so great hopes for ends up in disappointment. On the other hand, those who started with nothing but faith in the words of the spiritual master, for them they get results that exceed their expectations. They experience life as a wonder, as a thrill at every moment. Now, people in general, they don't appreciate this attitude. They think it's c'est la vie. They think it's laissez-faire. They think it's irresponsible. They say, how can you move forward on such a flimsy platform as faith in God and putting yourself in the middle of what he wants done in this world? Said, what is day for the devotees is night for the materials. They can't understand how without any plan, without any jobs, the temple devotees move on, they distribute books, they express their outreach and their compassion on people by doing everything they can to introduce people to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and the 4 regulative principles. And how the movement is growing and how the movement is being successful is completely unfathomable to those who are materialistic people. One English lord, an aristocratic lord, once he was interested in Bhaktisiddhanta's movement. So he asked Bhaktisiddhanta, said, what would I have to do to become a devotee? So this is the point where you're told to break your bow, right? This is the make or break point for your spiritual life. He asked the bona fide guru what he had to do. He didn't say beforehand that whatever you say, I'll do. This is an English lord. This is a man who's supposed to be the cream of the crop on the top of society. But that very aristocracy, that very high birth, appears to be an impediment because he's asking in a very curt way, maintaining distance between himself and the bona fide guru. Magrari said up front, whatever you say, I will do. But the English lord didn't phrase his question that way. He said, what would I have to do if I wanted to become a Krishna devotee? So here's the break the bow statement. Bhakti said you have to give up illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, meeting. And the English lord looked down his nose at Bhakti and he said, impossible. possible. See? Where are your English lords today? Where is England? At the time that he spoke down his nose to Bhaktisiddhanta, England controlled the whole world. Said the sun never set on the English Empire. And because of the pretension of aristocracy, because of colonialism and conquest, and the arrogance that came with that, where are the English lords? Where is the English Empire today? And where is the Krishna consciousness movement, which is founded on the principle of throwing your bow, breaking your bow, throw it in the water, giving up attachment to intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling, and taking up the call, the mission of the spiritual master. Prabhupada says he predicted, if the devotees continue to exhibit unflinching faith in the orders of the Lord as expressed to the spiritual master, dedicating life and soul to the lotus feet of Krishna, no one will be able to check the Krishna conscious movement. The movement will go forward without any limits. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rob, you have any comments here? We're also.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Prabhuji. I did have comments and they just escaped me. Perhaps I wasn't supposed to say them.
Jump in if anything occurs to you. Well, those are our meditations for today. I hope it's been productive and fruitful and interesting to all of you. Ram Kishore, John Malik, Rakesh Raghava, Natasha, Jay from Phoenix, Anjali from Phoenix. You guys sitting beside each other, sharing the same monitor in the land of the sun. Dr. Gary, Northern California. John Malik, thank you, John. Thomas, Haribol, don't be satisfied to go to the spiritual world alone. There's no one who personifies that. When Thomas gets to the spiritual world, there are going to be hundreds of people who come up and say, you are the one that turned my foot on the journey. You are the one that created a favorable first impression. You are the one that put me on the path. There's no doubt in my mind that Thomas has to look forward to a lot of approbation when he gets to the spiritual world. There's going to be a ticker tape parade for Thomas when he gets there. I had a discussion with a devotee one time because I mentioned we like 5-star reviews on Google. And the devotee said, oh, we don't care what people think of us. We don't care for public opinion. Well, I mean, we don't need people's approval. We're not defined by people what people think. That was the whole point of my talk, was that we don't go the way that people go. We don't put our faith in the temporary economy or the politics. We put our faith in a different direction. So all that's true. But as far as like getting people's approval, that's really what preaching's all about. People need to approve of the way that the devotees comport themselves. They need to approve of the cleanliness and maintenance of our temples. They need to be enthusiastic about attending festivals. If you don't have what they want, if you don't show a light, if you don't act according to a higher standard of excellence and accountability, then I'm not sure that you're going to be an effective preacher. So I don't agree with the statement that we don't care what people think of us. I don't agree with that at all. I think that getting 5-star reviews is very much in line and has a lot to do with how we're conducting our preaching mission. I just wanted to get my 2 cents in there. And there's no one who, I've generated a lot of 5-star reviews. Advaita, when he was here, he generated a lot of 5-star reviews. Thomas generates a lot of 5-star reviews. So I think if you want to measure your preaching effectivity, and if you want some indication of how much faith you have in your spiritual master, then there's worse standards that you could look to than how many 5-star reviews that you're getting on Google. Some people just don't like what you're doing. That they just like the postman. He may be a great guy, may be very personal, may be very considerate and kind, but some dogs there's nothing you can do. Some dogs are just not going to like the postman, and so we'll always have enemies, even if we don't even if we are faultless, gentlemanly, kind in our approach and treatment of people. It's not to say we won't have enemies, and we don't care about those people. We don't care. We're not going to let them spoil our day. But if there's someone who, depending on how we treat them, could go either way, and we act in such a way that they go away from Krishna when they had the potential to come to Krishna, and they give us a 1-star or 2-star review, then we need to re-examine, our way of thinking, our priorities. Anyway, enough said on the subject. So, appreciative of Thomas. Yes, you are my example of welcoming guests with joy. Yes. All right. Jay says that Anjali, you're aware of Anjali. That's good, and vice versa. They live about an hour from each other in Phoenix. Nice. Rupa Manjari, thanks for dropping in. She usually listens to classes later on YouTube, but she's able to join us today. Propana Brat Gopal, haven't seen you for a while, always glad you can drop in. I think that's about everybody. Natasha mentioned, Rakesh, Ram Kishore, Bhai Bobby, Brent, Sundari Priya, Jean. All right, that should do it for today. We'll be back tomorrow with more on this principle of exhibiting faith in the Guru and the words of the spiritual master. Have you thought of anything, Rob?
Not what I was going to say, but something that did come to me is we shouldn't aspire for 5 stars, but we should provide 5-star service.
Exactly. Yes. Nicely said. We'll see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.